And like I think I've told the story on the show before about the time that Carol and I, my wife and I, attended a funeral of a Noahide friend of ours. He's lost his wife. She'd grown up Amish, and he'd grown up Mennonite, and they had become B'nai Noach. They had been drawn to Torah, and so we went to their funeral in Indiana, to her funeral, and it was a very interesting scene to see. We were surrounded by people in black, who, as they say in the Jewish world, they looked frum, they looked observant, but yet they were Amish. But the man leading the ceremony was their rabbi, and he asked a question which I often think about. He said, if it happens to fall on the same day that you have to attend either a wedding or a funeral, he says, which one would you go to? Which one should you go to? And I know you know the answer, and maybe some of our viewers and our audience do. You should go to the funeral. You should go to the funeral. And why? Because more than anything, funerals are for the living. They're for us to reflect,
to take to heart,
to think about
the importance of living every day to the max.
Yeah, and that's embodied in the idea, because the Parsha is about the death of Sarah, and yet what is it called, Rabbi?
The life of Sarah, right?
The life of Sarah.
Exactly.
Wow.
That's the whole
And
thing.
the first thing that I'd like to say regarding what you mentioned about that rabbi at the funeral and what he said, it's actually based on a verse. The verse is in Ecclesiastes chapter 7 and verse 1, where we read, what does it say there? It says, a good name is better than fine oil, and the day of death than the day of birth.
Right.
So we all know that Ecclesiastes can be a downer. We all know that
Yeah.
we all know that many of the verses there are talking about the vanity of things and the futility of things that King Solomon in his identity of Kohelet, writes. But it's such a moving and beautiful book. And the fact is that Sukkot, which is considered to be the time of our joy, that's the description of the holiday of the tabernacles, and it's the pinnacle of joy. That's the time when on the Shabbat of the intermediate days of Sukkot, we read Kohelet. Because the question is, well, what is joy? Joy is not frivolity. It's not slapstick, and it's not, joy is really understanding what life is all about. But anyway, so the Midrash Rabbah on that verse in Ecclesiastes, that a good name is better than fine oil, and the day of death and the day of birth, gives us this famous example of a ship. That there's a ship going out, and everybody's there at the pier to send it off, and they send it off, with the breaking a bottle and all the things that people do, and they make a big holiday out of the fact that this ship is going out now. And then at the same time, like way out on the horizon, there's a ship coming in after a long journey, and nobody's there to greet it. So the Midrash says, actually, this scene doesn't make sense. It should be the opposite. To send off a ship with a lot of excitement and a hullabaloo, it doesn't really make sense. It should be more of a modest affair, and people should be circumspect, and they should be a bit humbled and prayerful, because you don't know what's going to happen to that ship. But the ship that already is coming in after a successful journey, how ironic that nobody appreciates the fact that it's coming in now. So that's kind of what that rabbi was saying, is that everything goes by how we spend our lives, really, and the living have to take that to heart. The living have to take that to heart as an inspiration that we shouldn't be crippled by the prospect of death. None of us, at least myself, and probably I'm speaking for you as well, we haven't met anybody yet that isn't going to die. And the word pachad in Hebrew, Jim, I know you like letters and gematrias. The word pachad, pe, chet, dalid, can be rearranged to spell dachaf. And dachaf means like pressure. It means like pushing to the point of breaking, to vulnerability. And that's a very interesting lesson, because most people are paralyzed by thinking about death, and they're not even willing to speak about it. And there is something intimated by those interchangeable letters, because a person's life becomes dominated by these kind of thoughts that are thoughts that are morbid, and their feelings are confused about all of this. And it comes from thinking that death is the end. And it is the end of the body. It is the departure of the nefesh from this world to the next world. And was it Wordsworth that I'll paraphrase, that in his poem, having nothing to do whatsoever with this topic, but I like the lines. The line, he said, "The world is too much with us." The subject of the poem was, I think, about the Industrial Revolution in England, but still, it's a beautiful line. The world is too much with us. And the fact is, if someone thinks that this is all there is to it, and lives their life based on material gain and acquisition and satisfaction, and thinks about the fact that in the end, you're basically doomed to death, that's a terrible way of going through life. But like we said, there's nothing morbid about this. So Rabbi Nachman says, a person wakes up in the morning, his advice, the holy Rabbi Nachman says, first thing a person should do when they wake up in the morning is go to the window, look up at the sky, and remember that there's another world. This isn't even it. And start your day by getting a perspective, and not to be fooled and roped into this illusion.
Mm-hmm. Well, illusion, that's a key word to consider, because one of the most fascinating things that I first encountered about Judaism and the Torah lessons was how the Chazal, the rabbis, the sages of old, call when someone passed away, they would say, now they are in the world of reality, the world of
truth, right?
The world of truth. That's you enter. That is diametrically opposed to this amorphous, sort of nebulous idea of what happens to a person after they die. And for some reason, the memory that I've never shaken is my first funeral, and I think I was 7 or 8. And I heard a phrase that I heard in every funeral since then, except a Jewish funeral. And that is that the pastor would generally say, well, they're in a better place. And now, obviously, that's true, but the mood and the expression behind that conveyed to me as a kid that this world doesn't mean anything. It's like all of our experiences and I thought as a kid, well, from this point on, I guess it's just waiting to die. I mean, this is the impression I got.